Board's LinkedIn Live. Today we are going rural. We are talking to the national industry body GrainGrowers, and they are looking for 2 new non-executive directors. There is only one catch. You do need to be a grain grower. Fortunately, there's lots of those. A member of GrainGrowers and based in the southern region, which covers a very large swathe of Australia. In fact, more than half of New South Wales. You draw a line from Dubbo and go down, all of Victoria and Tasmania. Even if this isn't new, the grain industry touches us all in a myriad of ways, and of course, one of our largest export industries. Stay tuned to learn more about the Australian grain industry with my guest today, GrainGrowers Non-Executive Director, Julia Hausler. Hi, Julia.
Hello, nice to be with you, Claire.
So, Julia, you and your husband operate a successful family farming operation in Warracknabeal in Victoria's Wimmera region. However, you grew up in Wellington in central west New South Wales, where your family owned a rural supplies business. How did you find yourself in Western Victoria?
Well, thanks, Claire. I went to uni, obviously, not obviously, but I studied an undergraduate degree in economics and a postgrad in agricultural economics. And I was pretty keen to actually travel the world using that degree. So I joined an American multinational company that a lot of people would be familiar with called Cargill as a field merchant. And started my journey in Queensland and then got moved to Western Victoria, which is where the journey came to an end. So,
you met a bloke, let me tell you.
So for the 1,000 times I told myself I wouldn't marry a farmer, I married a farmer, and here I am. But no, it's been a good journey, and when one door closes, another opens. And oddly enough, I've still managed to fulfill some of that journey around the world and talking ag.
So can you give us a bit of a quick outline on what you produce on your farm and your role in the farm business?
Yeah, sure. So we grow lentils. That's our number one value crop. Canola, wheat, barley, and vetch hay. We did have some breeding ewes and lambs, but they've all but gone at the moment with dry conditions. And so that's the crops that we grow. And my role, as I mentioned, I had come from a marketing accumulation corporate background. So I still do a fair bit of that for our business. I do the marketing and our harvest logistics. We have quite a reasonable on-farm storage setup as well that requires year-round management, HR, and financial planning, strategy, business, all those things, Claire.
Wow, you're wearing a lot of hats there, which is often the case. So you're a member of GrainGrowers, or your farm is a member of GrainGrowers. Why are you a member of GrainGrowers, and what does it do for your farm business?
Well, actually, I just celebrated my 20-year anniversary of being a member of GrainGrowers. So I've been in this space for quite some time. GrainGrowers has wonderful initiatives that help our business. There's opportunities and programs that they run through the year. So recently I attended a Carbon Curious dinner, which is starting on some of that sustainability conversation, and grain marketing workshops, which even though that's my background, it's good to keep afresh of any new changes. I also think GrainGrowers does a great job in advocating to government and also to make sure that, trade and market access conversations are at the forefront as well. We were affected by when China put the tariffs on barley a couple of years ago, and it was a price drop hike of $60 to $80 overnight with a decision like that. So it's really important that we have good industry bodies who understand what that means to growers and to be able to articulate that on our behalf.
Yes, of course. And of course, with the advent of Trump, the global arena is not getting any less complex or less volatile. So that's obviously a key role. So look, you started on a Grain Growers Committee in 2014, the National Policy Group. You were then elected to the board in 2016. Can you describe what it felt like being elected to the board? Because you're a grower member, which means there's a lot of other people who backed you, and your experience of the first few meetings.
Yes, so being a grower member elected to the board means it is an election. The members have to vote you in. It's not necessarily skills alone that get you across the line. So I was pretty excited to be the first female grower ever to get on the GrainGrowers board. And for the first couple of meetings, I think I just listened and observed more than participated. I think it's really important to understand the dynamic of the board and the people who are around you and how they interact, and get a feel for culture as well, particularly around the board again, but also in the organisation. And I would say that they are two areas that I have really spent a lot of time honing my skills in and ensuring that GrainGrowers board is doing those things well. So that's culture and board dynamic.
So GrainGrowers has an 8-member board, 2 grower members from each of the western, northern and southern regions, and 2 independent directors who sit outside of the election cycle that you've just described to us. How well have you found this model works in terms of both serving the organisation, but in terms of the boardroom dynamics, where you have a quarter of the board who may have nothing to do with grain growing?
Well, I really like this model, actually. So independent directors are fresh eyes and bring a new perspective or a differing perspective, and they can challenge our thinking around the board. So whether they come from a corporate background, I'm just thinking through some of the independent directors that I've worked with through my 9 years at GrainGrowers, and they come from corporate backgrounds or they come from other industries outside of grains, which may have some similarities, but also have some unique traits that we can learn from. I think also they balance the grower expertise. There is quite a bit of grower expertise around the table, but we don't want to make, if it was only growers around the table, is it an echo chamber of conscious bias? Are we actually getting out and making meaningful statements or meaningful actions for our members? So I think that's the first sort of thing I like about the model is the extra perspective or different perspective that they bring. The other thing I like about this model is they keep us real and out of jargon and acronym land. So as you can appreciate with any industry, you can get very caught up in your own language, and that's fine if you're talking to the people who are in that language set. But if you want to talk across government or crossbenchers or people, who come from outside of the rural landscape, city folk, etc., then you've got to be able to have the language that suits. So whilst, I might say things like, mass balance or ISCC or MRLs or off target, this doesn't actually mean anything to the layperson. So it's good to have someone sitting at the table to remind us not to use that sort of language all the time and break our language down, that it's more servable to a wider audience.
Yeah, there's a couple of really great points there, and I agree with you. And a lot of sports boards, and in fact, a lot of member-based organisations have a very similar model, and it does serve them very well. You're stepping off the board. Your time is up. You've done your 9 years. So, what should someone who's interested in and meets the criteria for this board expect in terms of commitment to the organisation?
Well, there's the usual commitments, of course, of turning up to board meetings. It's approximately 6 a year. And then we have some subcommittees as well. So I chair the People and Culture subcommittee. So not only will they be looking for a new director to replace me, but they'll also be looking for a new chair of the People and Culture committee. We also have an Audit and Risk committee and an investment committee. GrainGrowers serves a few industry roles. So the representative organisation for GRDC. And we sit on a few councils and commodity spaces as the lead grains commodity for the NFF, the National Farmers Federation. So there's also some industry roles that we do there. But outside of that, there's other opportunities as well. GrainGrowers board pride themselves on continuous learning. So we have done or continue to do quite a bit of governance training in-house, particularly around cybersecurity. We've done our positive duty and we've done our psychosocial hazards training, for instance. So we do take our governance learning really seriously. And then I've been really fortunate, and I said right at the beginning of this conversation how I wanted to sort of take ag around the world. I've been really fortunate in my time with GrainGrowers to have participated with AGIC, Australian Export Grains Innovation Centre, on a 5 Southeast Asia country tour. I was a speaking presenter to millers and bakers and flour processors and noodle manufacturers across these countries, talking about how we produce predominantly wheat was the conversation, but how we produce our crops in Australia and the rigour that we undertake to make sure that it's good production that they're interested in, quality, and meets their needs. And it was such a wonderful opportunity to be able to present and meet these people. But then on the subsequent days, we would actually go out to flour processors or a Heineken beer factory or noodle manufacturer, and we're very pleased to have sampled lots of noodles.
Sounds like a gourmet tour, this one.
So it's such a privilege and an honour to have been, a grower from Northwest Victoria, standing in these locations around the world, promoting our quality grain.
Yeah, wow, what an opportunity. One of the roles of GrainGrowers, and you touched on this, is to oversight how Grain Research and Development corporations spend grower levies. And it may surprise listeners to know, of course, that the GRDC received a little over 200 million in grower levies alone in 24-25 financial year. It's sitting on financial resources of around $1 billion, including cash reserves of around more than 600 million. Grain is big business, Julia. So can you put it in context for listeners in terms of our domestic production and both export value as well?
Well, absolutely. So I can bore you with some ABARES data about now, Claire, and your listeners. So there's approximately 34,000 employees across 22,500 grain businesses in Australia. This generates around 31 billion in export earnings, or more importantly, back to the Australian economy, around $33 billion. So yes, grains is big business. The GRDC have a very important role. They collect levies from growers and put that back into research and development. And our role is to help ensure that those levies are spent wisely, strategically, and with impact. This can be from really basic everyday science to looking at pest and disease control, plant breeding, autonomous machines, lots of different areas of research and development, and even funding new and emerging ideas and blue sky kind of areas. So it is important that we do have a robust R&D system in Australia. Our grains industry wouldn't be as successful as it is and generate as much money as it does if we didn't have that really strong R&D support from the GRDC. So yes, big dollars, but big impact. And here's a fun fact for you. 88% of our domestic food supply is from Australian farmers. So very high reliance. And we're super excited that the federal government have seen fit to set up a National Food Council. We'd say a food policy in this country has been long overdue. And so really look forward to watching this space of setting a food security strategy for Australia.
Yeah, how amazing. And of course, innovation, which is one of the big things that comes out of Australian agriculture. We are known as a very innovative agricultural space. And I think right there, you've just outlined how probably our largest industry, or one of our very largest industries, takes a really scientific approach to that as well. Switching now to sustainability, one of the skills listed for the director position is understanding of sustainability and ESG. How important is sustainability in the grains industry in 2025?
Important. So it's a really interesting thought. For the last sort of 30 years that I have been involved in Australian ag, people like to trot out the dependable statement of clean and green. Australian ag is clean and green. But is that dependable statement defendable? And I think that's the new space that we're in now with sustainability. It's not just saying that we are, it's proving that we are. This is where scientific rigour is going to be important, plus practice-based or examples or solutions from growers, and also understanding what frameworks people are being asked to sign up to or to meet, and are they fit for purpose? Because taking a framework that suits a North American climate or a European climate and soil type is not really robust enough for Australian agriculture. And while I'm not advocating that we need our own set of measures, we do need to customise frameworks and customise sustainability goals that suit Australian standards better. But we do also need to be, held accountable on a global scale of being able to actually say that we are producing clean and green products. So I think it's a learning journey as well, this sustainability space. GrainGrowers have been heavily invested in the last 5 years to getting a grain sustainability framework up for the benefit of the whole industry. And I think now part of that role is for growers also to participate and be along the journey. So if you don't already know your number, your carbon number, that is, I encourage growers to go and find out their carbon number and be open to the conversations and part of the journey. So I've signed our farm, for instance, up to a program with GrainCorp called GrainCorp Next. And the idea is that we are going to try and get a low emission canola supply chain from paddock to plate. So, but it's a learning journey together. GrainCorp not saying they've got all the answers, and we as growers are not saying that we're going to do all the things that necessarily might get us to a zero position, because that might not be achievable, or it may impact other aspects of our business. So it's working through some of these spaces together with companies like GrainCorp who are prepared to pilot these programs for growers to trial.
Yeah, wow. Sounds really interesting, which may lead a little bit to my next question around time, because you've served on a number of other boards in your past, of course, including as chair of Northwest Rural Health. When you stop off GrainGrowers, you're going to have a lot more time, or maybe not. But what is next for Julia Hausler?
Well, I still have a day job here with our farm that will occupy some of my time and space. And I have a few other roles as well, such as the Pulse Council for Grains Australia. And I'm on a AICD regional forum committee as well. I'd like to continue on my director journey, and I'm not quite sure which way that will take me, maybe more ag roles, or I do have now some health skills and regional development skills as well. So wait and see, Claire.
Watch this space. Julia, thank you very much for joining me. If anyone is interested and meets the criteria for those board roles, be sure to jump online. You can jump onto the Women on Board's website, or of course you can pick it up at GrainGrowers as well. All that remains for me is to say thank you very much for joining me. I have particularly enjoyed the walk back through all of the agricultural things that you've talked about, and of course the significance and importance of the Australian grain industry, which was very much on display there. Big congratulations for being the first female director on GrainGrowers, because I'm sure you won't be the last. There are others there now, and of course they're actively looking to really, really push that out and to get some more females applying. Hence posting the vacancy with us here at Women on Board. So thanks to everyone for joining us, and a big thanks to Julia.